Astral Dragon. Hello everyone, Nick the DM here with the second video on the Dungeons & Dragons Astral Dragon. In my last Astral Dragon video, I showed you the Astral Dragon from 1st edition, covering its lore and converting some stats to 5th edition. In today's video, we're taking a look at the Astral Dragon from Advanced D&D 2nd edition, a completely different kind of Astral Dragon, so let's get into it. The Astral Dragons from 2nd edition are covered in two sources, Planescape, A Guide to the Astral Plane, and Monstrous Compendium 4, Dragonlance Appendix. Both of these books talk about the same dragon, but from two different perspectives. The Dragonlance Appendix, of course, talks about them as if they were written on the world of Krynn from the Dragonlance setting. Planescape, A Guide to the Astral Plane is written like the journal of a planar traveler with first-hand accounts of the traveler's experiences, which is a bit more humorous in its language, so I'll be quoting from that quite a bit. The Astral Dragons have ties to the world of Krynn. They are an ancient race of golden dragon to whom all dragons of Krynn can trace a common ancestry. Among the first dragons ever created by the gods of Krynn were two astral dragons, Dion and Procene. These dragons were directed to give birth to a race of dragons that the gods could adopt as their own. Selected newborns were taken from their parents and transformed to reflect the personalities and philosophies of the gods who adopted them. These were the early archetypes of the black, red, gold, silver, and other dragons. Dion and Procene remain neutral, and, in exchange for their offspring, the gods pledged to leave them alone. When Dion and Procene grew weary of the constant tension between the good and evil dragons, they appealed to the gods to be relieved of their duties and obligations on Krynn. The gods granted their request and relocated them to an alternate plane of existence. Anyone have any guesses as to where that was? Anyone? That's right, the Abyss. Not really. Dion and Procene went to the astral plane. However, on the world of Krynn, all outer planes were considered part of the Abyss. At least they were for a time. To quote A Guide to the Astral Plane, quote, "Astral dragons are said to have ties to the prime material world called Krynn, a place so backward that they think all planes beyond their own are the Abyss. If a body sees a tome that places an astral dragon in the Abyss, keep that in mind. Astral dragons, as any leatherhead could figure out, live on the astral." End quote. In time, these dragons gave birth to new generations of neutral astral dragons, which is what we are dealing with now. Astral dragons are the personification of neutrality in dragons and have unique lives and growth compared to other dragons. These immortal dragons are just shy of demi-powers in terms of might. Demi-powers being either the weaker variety of quasi-deity or the lowest rank of gods, depending on the edition you look at. However, these dragons do not start life at this power. When an astral dragon hatches, it has a dull yellow color to its scales, has human hands with long, slim fingers, huge black eyes, and fine blonde hair covering its scales. This is the Unmated astral dragon. Once an astral dragon reaches 5 years old, it is dispatched from its parents to fend for itself. This is where it gets interesting. Astral dragons don't age and grow like most dragons. In fact, the largest these dragons get is 5 feet long. An astral dragon will grow slightly from when it first hatches, gaining 1 hit die and slightly worse armor class, but this doesn't matter too much because of its most prominent ability, its regeneration. Astral dragons have the ability to, quote, instantly regenerate any wound, end quote, according to the Guide to the Astral Plane, and the Monstrous Compendium Dragonlance says, quote, they are essentially immortal, instantly recovering all lost hit points, end quote. In doing more research for this ability, I wanted to compare it to the Troll's regeneration from 2nd edition to see if it was a similar description or a similar attribute. It was not. The 2nd edition Monstrous Manual says, quote, trolls regenerate at an amazing rate. Starting 3 rounds after first blood, the creature recovers 3 hit points per round until healed, end quote. This makes the astral dragon's regeneration absolutely insane, considering it is instantaneous regeneration, and a troll with their pretty good regeneration only heals 3 hit points per round. But because it wasn't very specific, I had to get creative with it for the stats. but we'll touch on that later. Astral dragons could only be killed by power word kill, wish, or a similar spell according to both sources. At this stage in their life, an astral dragon has the senses equivalent to that of a very young dragon, and can bite and claw to defend itself, though they are very sluggish. And they will always try to flee rather than fight, but they do have a genius level intellect of a 17 to 18 intelligence score in 2nd edition. Now, these small, weak astral dragons are called unmated astral dragons, as I said earlier, and since they don't age, they can stay this way for a very long time, and they will never really grow any bigger, even if they were on a plane that has proper aging and time manipulation. That is, however, until they find a mate. Once an unmated astral dragon finds a mate, and they appeal to a god of neutrality to sanction the union, they both will undergo a massive change, receiving powers and growing to protect their mate. The mated pair of dragons grow to 50 feet long, which isn't very big for a dragon, as even white dragons in the Dragonlance setting can grow to be up to 80 feet long, and are said to become practically impervious to harm. Now, the physical description of this new form is a bit confusing. The Monstrous Compendium Dragonlance depicts them as a typical Dragonlance dragon with 4 legs, 2 wings, and a tail, and with large black eyes, and are enveloped permanently in golden light. However, the Planescape Guide to the Astral Plane has 2 contradictory depictions. The artwork shows the dragons as having long, wingless bodies with 4 legs and prominent, wavy horns. The dragons have gold scales and what looks like gold or yellow eyes, similar to the gold dragons of 1st edition. However, just beneath the picture is an excerpt from the journals of Tirak Spur, Planeswalker, which says, quote, "A long, graceful neck and powerful body and huge, fleshy wings identified it at once to be a dragon, but unlike any I'd seen before." End quote. The main contradiction there is the mention of huge fleshy wings, which the dragons in the picture lack, but in the written description seem to have. But it matches the appearance seen in the Monstrous Compendium Dragonlance. It is possible that because the dragons so similarly resemble the gold dragons in design and appearance, they may also share the 2nd edition gold dragon's ability to adopt a wingless form. To quote the 2nd edition Monstrous Manual, quote, "A gold dragon's natural form has wings. However, they sometimes choose a wingless form to facilitate swimming, gaining the higher swimming rate listed above." End quote. So the possibility is there, but it is not specifically mentioned. In addition to their new physical form, a mated astral dragon's intelligence goes from genius, which was 17 to 18, to godlike, which is a 21, which are 2nd edition descriptions of the scores, not my own personal opinion. They gain the ability to attack as any dragon would with its bite, tail, claws, wings, and other 2nd edition attack options, rather than being limited to biting and clawing as their unmated form. A mated astral dragon can radiate fear out to 50 feet and has the natural sense equivalent to that of a great worm. They keep their near immortal regeneration with the same vulnerability to wish, power word kill, and similar spells. They also gain spellcasting prowess equal to a 30th or 35th level cleric, according to the Guide to the Astral Plane and Monstrous Compendium Dragonlance, respectively. Which is just absolutely insane, might I add. And one more thing, mated astral dragons have a spell resistance of 95%. In 2nd edition, this meant that there was a 95% chance a spell targeting the dragon would just fail. And on that 5% chance that the spell succeeded, the dragon still got to attempt its spell saving throw. For comparison, Tiamat in the Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition Draconomicon has a spell resistance of 85%, 10% less than that of the mated astral dragon. This was difficult to work with when converting the stats, but fun overall. While they may have the same physical prowess of other elder dragons, astral dragons prefer to use their spells to scare away foes, which is understandable considering that they have the spellcasting ability to make high priests and archwizards envious. Eat your heart out, Elminster. To symbolize and bless this union between dragons, a neutral power, like a god or multiple gods, will gift the mates a chain. This chain is 100 feet long and encircles the necks of the mates at either end to link them for all eternity. Talk about the old ball and chain, right? The old ball and chain, right? You see, it's funny because marriage is terrible. This chain is said to be golden in the Monstrous Compendium Dragonlance, but the Planescape Guide to the Astral Plane says the material differs between each pair of mates. The chain is nigh indestructible, only being able to be broken by a wish spell or an equivalent or greater power. If the chain is broken and the mates are separated by 100 yards or 300 feet for more than 30 days, they revert to their unmated forms. The dragons don't see this chain as a hindrance, but a blessing. After receiving these blessings, the couple lives, fights, and plays as a unit. Before mating, an astral dragon wanders the astral plane, dipping in and out of color pools. After mating, however, a mated pair of astral dragons are given a black crystal palace as a mating gift from the gods. The mated pair rarely leaves their black crystal palace and never voluntarily leaves the astral plane. These dragons are so powerful that the very presence of one of these crystal keeps can change the astral plane around it, often causing it to change color and sometimes even the physical laws of the plane. To quote Planescape, A Guide to the Astral Plane, quote, "They are truly masters of these tiny realms, and only a real Adelcove would cross one in its home." End quote. Since these dragons don't leave their homes often and never travel the planes, they send out tiny dragons known as co-dragons to gather information for them. The astral dragons can speak their own language, plus the language of good and evil dragons, but have the ability to communicate with all other intelligent creatures, which could mean communication via telepathic images and emotions, or an ability like monks in 5th edition to understand all speech and be understood by all creatures that can speak a language. But this isn't given any more detail other than the ability to communicate with all intelligent creatures. Despite these communication abilities, astral dragons don't like to deal with other dragons except co-dragons. Astral dragons' diets consist of liquid, any liquid. To them, water and mercury have the same nourishing value. Though if they are affected by the astral plane like other creatures are, they maybe need to drink every 1,000 years or so. And this does raise the question about poisons. Are poisons not also a liquid? They don't have poison immunity in either source book, so maybe it nourishes them but still poisons them, maybe makes them really sick. Just guessing at this point. If a mated pair of astral dragons wants to give birth, they must first petition the gods, which is often turned down in an attempt to keep the populations low. Gee, I wonder why the gods would want to limit the population of semi-immortal dragons with better spellcasting than all but the strongest of epic spellcasters. I assume that this means the gods take away their ability to give birth when they approve the union of two unmated astral dragons, but the sources don't get that specific. The Monstrous Compendium Dragonlance also mentions that the astral dragons have no natural enemies and have no interest in treasure, which is odd for a dragon. So that is it for the lore of the Advanced D&D 2nd Edition Astral Dragon. Now, normally when I convert stats to 5th edition like I normally do, I use the latter half of the video to convert just the ancient stat block for a dragon. But considering how the astral dragons have two forms and the unmated astral dragons have so little in their stats, I'm just going to cover both in this video, and I'm going to try to be really quick because there's a lot to go through. Of course, converting a creature with 30 to 35 levels in Cleric and instantaneous regeneration in 5th edition isn't an exact science, and some of the 2nd edition stats apply to a pair of dragons, while others apply to each dragon individually, so take whatever I give you with a grain of salt. It's as accurate as it can be. I tried my best. So, with that said, let's check out the stats. The Unmated Astral Dragon is a medium dragon in neutral alignment, has an armor class of 14, which is natural armor, has 27 hit points, or 5d8 plus 5, has a movement speed of 30 feet and a fly speed of 60 feet. Of course, on the astral plane, this won't apply. For ability scores, it has a 13 strength, 16 dexterity because of its human hands and dexterous fingers, a 12 constitution, 17 intelligence, 14 wisdom, and 16 charisma, has proficiency in dexterity saving throws, proficiency in expertise in perception, proficiency in sleight of hand, and proficiency in stealth. Has blind sight out to 30 feet and dark vision out to 60 feet, like that of a young dragon, just comparatively to the second edition stats, and a path perception of 16. Can speak Draconic and has telepathy out to 120 feet, so it can communicate with other intelligent creatures that have a language, even if they don't share a language. Has a challenge rating of 3. Has its immortal regeneration, where the dragon regains all hit points at the start of its turn. The unmated Astral Dragon can only be killed by Power Word Kill or a Wish spell. This means that for Power Word Kill, you have to get it below 100 hit points. That's not much of an issue. It has 27 hit points. And for a Wish spell, it can just kill it outright, but then the caster has to suffer the negative effects of casting a Wish spell. For its actions, it has a multi-attack where it can make 3 attacks, 1 with its bite, 2 with its claws. Its bite is a +3 to hit, reach of 5 feet, does 4 or 1d6 +1 piercing damage, and its claw is a +3 to hit, reach of 5 feet, hits and does 3 damage or 1d4 +1 slashing damage. Now for the Mated Astral Dragon. Is a Gargantuan Dragon, neutral alignment, has an armor class of 19. It had an armor class of -5 in 2nd edition, which was the same as a young adult Gold Dragon. 1 age category below adult, but 2 age categories above young, so it became the same armor class as an adult Gold Dragon in 5th edition. That was the conversion. For its hit points, it has 136, which is 70-20 plus 63. In 2nd edition, it had 35 hit dice. I don't know if this was supposed to be divided up amongst both members of the pair or each individual one. Again, that was a little confusing. But because of its regeneration, I had to get creative. With a CR23 monster, which this is, hit points are between 491 and 535, as under the monster building section of the Dungeon Master's Guide in 5th edition. But also within that same area, it says that regeneration has you add 3 times the regenerated amount to the effective hit points. So I divided 535 by 4 because 3 times for the regeneration and once for its base hit points. And dividing that, it came out to 133.75. The closest I got to that was 136 using its con modifier and average hit dice. So that is what we have, but we'll get more into that with the regeneration later. For its movement, it has 60-foot movement speed and 120-foot fly speed, which is great, but again, on the astral plane is based on its intelligence, but we'll get into why it still has a high fly speed later. Has 30 strength, 14 dexterity, which is lower than unmated, but it doesn't seem to have the actual human hands in any depiction of the mated pair. Has 29 constitution, 21 intelligence, 17 wisdom, and 28 charisma. Proficiency in dexterity, con, wisdom, and charisma saving throws. Proficiency in arcana, insight, expertise in perception, proficiency in persuasion, proficiency in sleight of hand, and stealth. It has, for its senses, it was said to have the senses of a great worm. I took that in 2 ways. I could have done it as per the great worms in earlier editions, where I just increased their dark vision and blind sight really high, but I decided to get a little creative, and in Fizban's Treasury of Dragons, great worms have true sight out to 120 feet, so I gave it true sight out to 120 feet, but also to keep that earlier edition charm, I also gave it dark vision out to 240 feet, which means it is very easy at spotting things from a distance, but with the abundance of light in the astral plane, it shouldn't make much of a difference. It has a passive perception of 27. Like its unmated variety, it can speak Draconic and has telepathy out to 120 feet. Its challenge rating is 23. Now, to get this, what I did was I compared the experience of the 2nd edition Mated Astral Dragons to that of the 2nd edition Ancient Gold Dragon, and I divided the Astral Dragons experience by the Gold Dragons experience to get a ratio, and then I used that ratio, multiplied it by the 5th edition experience for the Ancient Gold Dragon, which came out to 107,826, which is closest to the XP value for CR27. But then the XP value had to be divided by 2 because the statistics in 2nd edition applied to both dragons in the pair of mates. So this meant the 40,000 experience you would have gotten in 2nd edition was if you beat the pair, not just one. So I had to divide it in half, which became roughly 53,900 in 5th edition, which was closest to 50,000 experience, which is CR23. So each individual dragon is CR23, but because you will encounter them in a pair, and because of their lair actions and such, it is a CR27 encounter. For its abilities, it has chained mates, where the mated astral dragons are always found in pairs. They are within 100. They are connected by a 100-foot chain. Mated astral dragons connected by this chain cannot go further than 100 feet from one another, which will be interesting for battles because they still have to stay within a relative area to each other. They might be affected by a lot more area of effect spells. Uh, the chain can only be broken with wish. If the chain is broken and the pair of mates is separated for by at least 300 feet for 30 days, the dragons revert to their unmated forms. Or if one mate dies, the other mate converts to its unmated form after 30 days. This wasn't specified anything about one mate dying and the other one living in earlier editions, but I just took a guess with it over here. It has illumination, where the dragon sheds bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light an additional 10 feet. I gave it this because of the permanent glowing effect that the Dragonlance Appendix, Monsters Compendium number 4, talked about. You can lower this, remove it, do whatever you want with that. It's more flavor. Its immortal regeneration is the same as its unmated form. Now again, it regains all hit points at the start of its turn, so you'd have to knock it down below 100 hit points to have it be affected by Power Word Kill. And of course, with the hit points, as I mentioned earlier, it is very difficult. It is accurate hit points with how much it regenerates when compared to the monster making section in the Dungeon Master's Guide for 5th edition. However, you will also, even if you beat one of them, which should be fairly easy, you knock it down a few hit points and you hit it with Power Word Kill. Unless you have a second spellcaster on the team with a 9th level spell slot and either Wish or Power Word Kill available, you are now fighting a second very angry Astral Dragon. Next, it has legendary resistances. I gave it 4 per day because it's technically a bigger challenge than, say, the Ancient Dragons of 5th edition, but it is still not, I'd say, within the realm of fighting an aspect of Tiamat or Bahamut from Fizban's Treasury of Dragons. I gave it limited magic immunity, like Tiamat in Rise of Tiamat from 5th edition. The dragon can't be affected by or detected by spells of 5th level or lower unless it wishes to be. It has advantage on saving throws against all other spells and magic effects. Now, you could technically increase this to 6th level or lower because they have a 10% higher resistance than Tiamat back in the old days of 2nd edition. However, I kept it at 5th level because if you bring it up to 6th level, where they can't be affected by 6 or lower, that makes spellcasters have a very limited variety of spells they can hit this dragon with, and really they can only really be truly affected by things like Power Word Kill or Wish. It would take out a lot of their spell slots to only be able to use 7th, 8th, and 9th level spells. So I kept it at 5th. You can upgrade it to 6th if you want, but remember they're fighting 2 of these monsters at a time. For its spellcasting, I had to get creative. It's a 20th level spellcaster. It has Wisdom as its spellcasting ability because it's cleric spells. Is a DC 18 for saves plus 10 to hit, and it has, I wrote down the following 23 cleric spells and 5 cantrips prepared. 5 cantrips for the level of cleric it is, and 23 cleric spells based on its level plus its wisdom modifier. Now, of course, because they're either a 30th or 35th level in older editions, you can give them either more spells, more spell slots, which would be an easier one to do, where maybe a 2nd 8th level spell slot, a 3rd 7th, or a 3rd 6th. I maybe wouldn't give them 2 9th level spells, because that could completely break the encounter. But again, there are 2 dragons already, each with a 9th level spell. So it all depends on how hard you want to make the encounter for your players. I gave it just this as a baseline. You can do what you will after that. Another thing I should mention is most dragons have innate spells or spell-like abilities, which often allow them to cast spells without material components. This could be factored in for the mated astral dragons, since they were gifted their abilities directly from the gods. I didn't write anything down because it just said they had cleric levels, or could cast spells equal to that of a 20th or 30th or 35th level cleric. But you could give them the ability to not need material components. Additionally, however, the astral dragons not liking treasure can go one of 2 ways. They can either not collect anything, so they wouldn't have components, which would explain their ability to cast spells without material components, or they only have spellcasting components because they don't collect treasure, so they send co-dragons to go out and get material components from other planes. Though the bare minimum I would give them is I would allow their chain to count as a holy symbol for spellcasting, because it is a holy symbol. It was gifted directly from the gods, and it signifies a union. It makes sense to keep it that way. For its actions, its multi-attack is very different than that of a normal dragon, as it does not contain its frightful presence. They can only make 3 attacks, 1 with its bite and 2 with its claws. Its bite does is a plus 17 to hit, reach of 15 feet, and is 4d10 plus 10 piercing damage for 32. And then the claw is a plus 17 to hit, reach of 10 feet, does 4d6 plus 10 slashing damage, or 24. Its tail is a plus 17 to hit, reach of 20 feet. One target deals 19 or 2d8 plus 10 bludgeoning damage, and if the target is a creature, it must succeed on a DC 25 strength saving throw or be knocked prone. This is like the Great Worms in Fezman's Treachery of Dragons, so that's where I gave their tail attack from. Their bite is very much like Clogilia Matar from one of the Adventurers League modules. I can't remember it off the top of my head. In 2nd edition, the claw attack did 3d20 and the bite did a 1d100 damage, but because those dice are very inconsistent for damaging, and also 5th edition doesn't use those dice for damage ever, really, I just upgraded them from traditional 2d6, 2d10 to double that. So it should be a sufficient increase to damage. And of course, these are legendary creatures, so I gave them 3 legendary actions per round. They each get 3 legendary actions per round, so this can be a little difficult. However, they have a bunch of different options. They have a cantrip where they can use 1 legendary action to cast a cantrip at the end of another creature's turn. They can cast a spell of 3rd level or lower. They can detect where they make a perception check. And I put their frightful presence here. Because there are 2 dragons, having them use their frightful presence for free each round can be very taxing on the party. Though hopefully, if you see a giant black crystal palace in the distance, you are going to be wise enough to prepare anything to maybe prevent fright or give the party help against the frightened condition, just to make this a lot easier. The frightful presence costs 2 actions. It's only a range of 50 feet to keep it consistent with 2nd edition. Is a DC 24 wisdom saving throw or become frightened. You can repeat the saving throw at the end of your turn. If the effect ends or the saving throw is successful, they're immune to this dragon's frightful presence for the next 24 hours. It can make a tail attack, where the dragon makes a tail attack, and it can make a wing attack, which costs 2 actions. It beats its wings. Each creature within 15 feet of the dragon must succeed on a DC 25 strength saving throw or take 17 or 2d6 plus 10 bludgeoning damage and be knocked prone. The dragon can then fly up to half its flying speed. Now, another thing you might notice among its actions, it does not have a breath weapon. This was not a mistake on my part. They were never listed to have a breath weapon in either of the source books, in either of the statistics from earlier editions. These are one of the few dragons I could find that did not have a breath weapon. And originally I was like, oh, maybe it's because they are listed as gold dragons. They're not. They're golden. They're just the gold color. They are not a higher form of gold dragon. They're just dragons that happen to be the color gold, or golden colored. So the dragon does not have a breath weapon. Finally, we go to the Lair actions and the regional effects. This is the first time I'm really doing these, so I tried my best. I had to really do them because they mentioned specifically that the Black Crystal Palaces change the astral plane around it, and they are masters of their tiny realms. So I kind of had to force myself to do this for the first time. It happens on initiative count 20. Since there are 2 dragons, you could give each of them a Lair action, maybe one on initiative count 20, one on initiative count 10, or have them both go on initiative count 20. However, I would say just because with Lair actions, a dragon cannot repeat the same effect twice, or 2 rounds in a row, I'd say make it so that each dragon can't use the same effect on the same round. I gave them 3 effects. Its first effect, the dragon can change gravity in the lair to act as it would on the material plane or back as the thought-based movement of the astral plane. This lasts until the dragon uses this lair action again or until the dragon dies, at which point the effects of gravity on the astral plane continue. So this is what I gave it to make sense of its flying speed, because on the astral plane you don't need a flying speed because it is intelligence-based movement. However, they are specifically listed in both sources to have a very superior flying speed to that of other dragons, so I gave them the 120 feet, like other very high-class dragons like the Great Worms in 5th edition. though I changed it so they can choose gravity can be to be thought-based or be flight-based, and this can change situationally. This can change what spells the dragons and the players can use each round, so it can be difficult to overcome, but can also be very strategic. Its next ability is a wall of black crystal springs into existence on a solid surface within 120 feet of the dragon. The wall is up to 60 feet long, 10 feet high, and 5 feet thick, and it blocks line of sight. When this wall appears, each creature in its area must make a DC 15 dexterity saving throw. If it fails its save, it takes 18 or 48 bludgeoning damage and is pushed 5 feet out of the wall's space, appearing on whichever side of the wall it wants. Each 10-foot section of the wall has AC 13, 15 hit points, and vulnerability to bludgeoning and thunder damage, but resistance to piercing and immunity to psychic and poison. The wall sinks back into the ground when the dragon uses this lair action again, or when the dragon dies. So this is similar to the Green Dragon's Vine Wall ability, but I changed the armor class and hit points and vulnerabilities and immunities based on the material and based on the Dungeon Master's Guide suggestion for material and size of objects. The third ability is the dragon chooses a point on the ground that it can see within 120 feet of it. A 5-foot radius, 20-foot deep pit forms centered on that point. A creature on the ground above where the pit is formed must make a DC 15 saving throw. On a failed save, a creature falls to the bottom of the pit, taking 2d6 or 7 bludgeoning damage and landing prone. On a successful save, the creature moves to the nearest unoccupied space instead of falling in the pit. So this was just another situational terrain-based thing that the dragon could do, which could drop a player down to get them out of the way, get them out of line of sight, maybe take care of the spellcaster so they can't cast Power Word Kill. But either way, it's another situational thing. Regional effects. Because the dragon can change the area around its lair within the astral plane, most planar dragons I won't give regional effects to because they're on a different plane of existence anyways. There are enough regional effects to keep track of. In this case, the region containing the Black Crystal Palace of a mated pair of Astral Dragons is warped by the dragon's magic, which creates one or more of the following effects. The astral plane within 10 miles of the Astral Dragon Citadel is bathed in a colorful hue which changes color at random intervals. This is because it mentioned the astral plane being able to change colors within range in the earlier sources, and also it's just a fun little flavor. The second thing is the physical laws of the astral plane change within the presence of the astral dragon mates. Gravity within 1 mile of the lair works differently than the rest of the plane in one of the following ways. I either gave it no gravity, so it works like space. The area has no gravity. Creatures within 1 mile of the astral dragon mate's lair cannot move without the help of magic, such as the fly spell, or by pushing or pulling on another object. Momentum then carries the creature until impacting another object or being stopped by magical means. This means that if there's debris flying around, maybe Githyanki ships or corpses, the players can push off of them to move, but it's also very funny when the players are moving thought-based and are moving in a straight line and all of a sudden they can't stop or can't steer. And the second option is directional gravity. Gravity works in one direction as it would on the material plane, pulling creatures and objects down relative to the floor of the Astral Dragon's palace until the object or creature goes beyond 1 mile of the lair. So I made it like this to just kind of be a little funny. Again, if the players are flying, all of a sudden they start falling, and it is within a 1 mile sphere, so it won't be too detrimental considering there's not much to fall on in the astral plane. It's just another difficult thing to get around in order to get to the lair of the Astral Dragon. Which means the players could just fly vertically and go a 1 mile away and over top of the Crystal Palace and then fall and maybe hope to hit a feather fall if they were trying to get to the palace. And if both dragons die or revert to their unmated forms, the effects end immediately. Alright, that is it for the Astral Dragon as it is seen in 2nd edition. That was a lot of stuff to cover, especially with the stat block, but I had to explain a lot of stuff. A link to both stat blocks is down in the description if you'd like to use them in your campaigns. If you like this video but haven't seen my other video on the 1st edition Astral Dragon, then you might be interested in checking that out, and the videos I'll be posting soon on the 3rd edition and 4th edition Astral Dragons. If you've enjoyed this video, please leave a like to show your support, and subscribe if you like my content and want to see more of it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!